My name is Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers, and welcome to another 2014 League of Legends World Championship video analysis. Once again, this will be a video analysis, not a shoutcast, so there will be plenty of spoilers throughout the match as I talk about strategy and win conditions and whatnot, so you have been warned. Primarily, I will be looking at macro level strategy, team compositions in specific, their win conditions, how teams do, don't, and should be playing the matches to pull off these win conditions. I'll also be looking at macro level strategies such as map rotations, objective control, how to take Baron and turrets, as well as the occasional individual matchup, item choices, and individual play when it becomes apparent that these are paramount to the win or loss of a team. For this match, we have Kabum against Najin Shield. This is their second match in the group stages. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into picks and bans. In picks and bans, we see Thresh, Zed, and Janna being banned out. I kind of like these bans from Kabum. Thresh, Janna haven't really been very strong for Dans in their support, and so they have the back pocket of Morgana, and he's been doing really well on this. The Zed ban is also just targeted at Gung. Timone's is not big on him, I'd rather play other champions. On Najin Shield side, we see generic bans coming out again. Maokai Alistar taking out Lep in the top lane, while also knocking out Jinx to target ban against Minerva. We see Kabum Esports grabbing Zilean for their first pick. We don't know if this is going to be top mid. Najin Shield don't know if this is going to be mid or support rather. It's a bit of a flex pick. While I don't like him as a support too often, he can occasionally work in certain compositions. In this match though, he does end up being middle, and we get to see Najin Shield pulling out their mid Lulu as a counter to this Zilean. On Najin Shield side, we see Ryze, Nami being picked up. Very solid picks, running out of supports, picking up the Ryze. They want that solid top laner since he's open. Denies it from Lep. He's the one left in the trifecta. Neither one of these two top laners really play Rumble. We also see the Nami picking up that support early. Just allows Najin Shield more chances to counterpick other roles. On Kabum's side, we see Lee Sin being picked up in Tristana. Solid pick in Lee Sin, very good early play. Unfortunately for Danagorn, it's a little rusty on this champion. We see several mechanical mistakes coming out throughout this match. The Tristana pick, it's alright. We see Tristana being picked up a lot throughout the group stages, and then almost not at all during the brackets. The big problem is she loses out really hard in the lanes and in the mid game. She's almost like a crutch on your team, and you're waiting for the leg to heal. And then when the leg heals, it's like you have a bionic leg. And she becomes super extreme hyper carry. There's just better options to have a better power curve than Tristana, and we're going to see that happen in this match as well. On Najin Shield side, we see Kha'Zix and Corki being picked up. Kha'Zix is the response to Lee Sin when they're both up. Very generic junglers. We see Corki, he's a big lane bully, very strong, goes very well with this Nami. We saw Najin Shield play Corki as well in the last game versus Kabum. Did very well at keeping back Lucian and Janna. Is also gonna, this time around, Kabum do have the Morgana to stop Corki, but they have Tristana, who's going to be a weaker laner than Lucian was, so it doesn't really work out for them. Kabum should be looking for the 2v1, and they do in this game. They would be in a lot of trouble against Corki Nami, not only early on, but at the level 6 and as the levels keep growing as well. So they need to find that lane swap so that they're able to get away from this very unfavorable matchup. And on Najin Shield side, we see the final pick is Lulu. They made sure to save their mid lane pick for last because they wanted to make sure that they were picking this Lulu into Zilean, and that Zilean was not being a support pick. Najin White Shield use mid lane Lulu as their counter to Zilean, and it works out very well for a couple of reasons. Lulu can provide more damage in the duel than Zilean can, having better auto attacks, having better trade with her 2 spell skills instead of just Zilean's bombs. She also has the ability of Zilean simply pushes the lane fast with bombs to fast push as well. In fact, she can push even faster than Zilean can. And this is kind of why Lulu's a counter. She takes out the mid wave, and then she follows Zilean, keeps him at his tower. She doesn't let him roam. And this is how you counter Zilean, by preventing him from being able to roam. All you turn him into at that point is simply a farm bot, because he can't out-duel anyone. So this is a good pickup by Najin White Shield. Before getting into team compositions, we're going to have some good level 1 movements by Kabum. We can really see how they have evolved throughout the worlds. They're really starting to make more aggressive plays, create themselves more options, and make some tricky plays in strategy. And every next game they play, we see them getting better and better. For this level 1, we will actually see Kabum taking 3 buffs off of Najin White Shield, with Lee Sin starting red and Irelia, Tristana, Morgana going up and stealing Najin White Shield's red. They do misplay this lane swap, however, so you need to keep an eye out for it. Corki on the bottom lane will be getting the freeze, allowing him to stay in this lane by himself, deny Irelia tons of experience. This comes back really strong against Kabum, as we'll see Rise way ahead of Irelia. It's very unfortunate that Kabum let this happen, as if you're going to run the lane swaps, you really want your top laner, who's being your primary mid-game spike and who needs items to be that mid-game spike. You need to make sure that they can get that gold somehow. What we see, since Kabum is stealing the buff of Najin White Shield, they won't be able to pull off the freeze in the lane swap. So this gives you really just one option when you're running the lane swap, is to perform the 4-man dive on the top lane. Kabum could have easily pulled this off. They would have had 2 red buffs, as well as Morgana bindings, and potentially Irelia stun. You have the good solid ganking from Lee Sin and the damage. There was a lot of potential for this denial, and this would have denied Rise's CS and experience to make up for the fact that Irelia is not going to get any on the bottom lane. And I'll interrupt my team composition talk when this comes into play, and it's going to be very soon. So team compositions on Kabum's side, we have a bit of a better composition than last game against Najin White Shield. It's still kind of win lane, win game, but they do have a solid strategy, if not solid synergy. Kabum's strategy is to use Zilean and Irelia to make it through the mid game. They have 2 pretty solid power spikes. This is also facilitated by the fact that Lee Sin is very strong in the early game, has super solid ganks as well as good damage and utility. So you have 3 solid champions in the early into mid game. This is going to be Kabum will want to transition this into skirmish power for neutral objectives, into dominance over dragon, and then transition from that into letting Tristana scale up into the late game, and then Tristana can carry from then on. So interrupting real quick, this is the point that Kabum should be heading top. Lee Sin and Irelia should be running top. Morgana should have never gone bottom. She's not going to be able to do anything without Irelia TPing in there. So there's a bit of a miscommunication here. I really don't know where she's headed or what she's looking to do. If Kabum had gone from that blue buff up to this dive, even gone to the white up to the dive, they could have had 4-on-2 against a level 2 Nami and a level 2 Rise, while having 2 red buffs and 4 champions. It would have been much better. Instead, this Morgana spends a lot of time. She goes and gets one ward out. I guess it helps Aurelia be defensive, but the trade-off here is that Rise has gotten 8 CS to Aurelia's 0. He also has the wave pushing there, so he's getting the EXP. There's already a large advantage being gained, and even though Kabum have had the 3 buffs start, they are 200 gold behind, so they are losing out here. There's just bad management of the lane swap and something to take note of. If you're not going to get the freeze, you need to get off the dive. Otherwise, you need to send like 3 people bottom together to sort of push the bottom wave into the enemy's turret. That way it resets, but then you leave your top lane very vulnerable as well, your ADC. So it's a little interesting setup. It's a problem with not getting your creep wave freezes off. So take note of that, and we'll get back to talking about Kabum's team composition. So just to reiterate, it's a high mid-game focused, strong lanes through Aurelia Zilean, moving into very aggressive play in the mid-game, specifically using Zilean's ultimate to allow Aurelia and Lee Sin to make some over-aggressive plays and dives. Not necessarily dives onto towers unless they're in a number favorable situation, but dives onto Najin White Shield at the neutral buffs of the second blue, the second red. These are things they can go and contest. The big problem is, as stated before, they've got Aurelia in this situation where she's already fallen behind, where she's behind in EXP, behind in gold, and she really needs to get to that sheen, to get to that Trinity Force early enough to be powerful in this mid-game. This is doubly so because Najin White Shield are running Corki, who is also going to want to pick up a Trinity Force. So if Corki is able to grab his Trinity Force significantly ahead of Aurelia, then Najin White Shield are going to have the mid-game pressure in Lulu and Corki to take Dragon, and this denies Kabum a solid portion of their strategy. So this is a big problem with Kabum's win condition, is they're not getting Aurelia ahead, and they've actually set her behind by their map movements. They've been fairly strategic map movements at the start to be able to take the triple buff, but then it comes to bite them in the butt when they don't pull off the lane freeze and then they don't get the dive up top. Remarkably though, Kabum are able to snag first blood up there in the 2v1. So great play by them. Nice Morgana binding into Tristana. So it does work out a little bit for them, but it does mean that Aurelia is still behind. Najin White Shield attempt the same thing on bottom of the 3-man dive, but in this case, Lee Sin is there. And Morgana binding is a little easier to hit than Nami Bubble. If Nami Bubble had hit, then Aurelia would have died for sure there. So CC disparity. And Morgana running down the lane, because Kabum have decided after getting the first blood that they want to move into this matchup. This 2v2 matchup. Luckily Morgana was there. Works out, saves Aurelia's life. However, we're at a point where Aurelia is in a lot of trouble now. She's going back to lane and does not have her sheen. Rise is up 7 CS as well. He's got 2 mana items. He's got more power than Aurelia does right now. Aurelia really needs that sheen. The mana crystal amp tome do not do much at all for her power. In fact, I think she only gains damage on her E, and it's not very good scaling. So this makes what could have potentially been, with a couple hundred more gold, an item that gives a nice 90 damage burst or so, into something that's only increasing her burst by like 5 or 6. So this puts her really behind, and she can't fight Rise even though she's getting to this strong level 6 point. So if Kabum were able to generate a gold lead on Aurelia, we're able to get to the strong mid-game point first, where Aurelia can grab her Trinity Force, where Zilean now has a little bit of AP to go with his ultimate, where Morgana now has level 6 for the solid crowd control. Kabum moved towards Dragon, set up several wards, and look for Lee Sin to make a play. Lee Sin and Aurelia will be stronger than Ryze Kha'Zix at this point. Lulu Zilean are pretty similar. Morgana and Nami are pretty similar. Najin White Shield's strongest point is going to come from the Corki versus Tristana disparity. But ADCs being strong is not necessarily the biggest issue. They can be overcome in the mid game. So it's a close match, but still a little bit in favor of Kabum in my opinion. Especially if they can get Lee Sin to make the insect kick plays. That would greatly allow Kabum to take the dragon in a 5v4 and snowball an advantage from there. Snowballing that mid-game lead, they would then rely on Tristana once she reaches her late-game potential, protecting her with Aurelia, Lee Sin, Morgana, Zilean, and letting her chunk down turrets and carry the game. Unfortunately, as I think I already stated before, Aurelia's behind, and behind by quite a bit. It's getting close to double the CS on Ryze. And so this is becoming a big problem towards Kabum's win condition, and it's already falling apart. On Najin White Shield's side, they have a fairly similar win condition, though their team composition is more solidly built. Their win condition is use Lulu and Corki's mid-game power spikes to scale into the late game on Ryze. The reason their composition is a bit more solid is because Kha'Zix is also going to scale while being on similar power curves as Lee Sin. Lulu's going to be able to provide more in the late game than Zilean is. Her shield's giving great damage to her ADCs through help picks, as well as her ultimate is going to do wonders on Ryze, who does build fairly tanky since he likes to pick up armor and magic resist. This amplifies the effective HP that Lulu's ultimate will give him in the late game. On top of this, Corki's going to be able to fire lots of magical burst from the back line. He's got a lot of poke, even though Tristana is going to be really safe as well with her long range. A solid Ryze flash into Lulu damage should be able to pop Tristana unless she's already preemptively been hit by Zilean Chrono Shift. Black Shield's going to help a lot. I think the real disparity is just going to become that Lulu is going to provide more to her team than Zilean will in the late game. While Aurelia and Corki will stand kind of similar, Ryze and Tristana will be kind of similar, and then Kha'Zix will slightly scale past Lee Sin as well. So there's a little bit more late game into Najin White Shield's team, as well as having a very solid mid game in this Corki, especially with his poke, and that's something that Kabum are lacking. Kabum don't have any poke, so even in the late game, Najin White Shield have this option of having very solid poke. And this is an option that Kabum don't have. This poke is even going to be amplified by Kha'Zix with his evolved Spike Rack. And Najin White Shield also have solid disengage from Nami, which is something that Kabum don't have. So it's just overall a slightly better composition, and in the hands of better players, we're going to see that play out as you would expect. We do see Kabum does have the kill lead. They've done well in lanes. The CS disparity starts to become pretty big and will continue over the rest of the match. And this is also an important point, and this comes down to individual skill for this match. So let's see. I want to talk a little bit about this match on bottom lane, Tristana versus Morgana. Or not Tristana Morgana versus Corki Nami. It's at the very beginning of the match, it's very difficult for Kabum's side. If they were to go into this 2v2, Corki has a lot more burst, and we see it coming out right now. It continues into this mid game. His burst is really high, and Tristana has no response to that. The only saving grace is that Tristana's pretty safe as long as she doesn't fight. As long as she doesn't get hit by Nami bubbles, she can sit back and farm. Her entire objective is going to be dodge Corki's Qs and his rockets while just trying to scale up. That's why they've been able to stay in similar CS. If they had gone into the 2v2 from the start, though, it's more likely than not that the CS disparity would have been huge, at least 30, maybe 40. Right now we see Najin White Shield going for Dragon. This is a bit of risky play, and we see his 2Y here. It's pretty a little arrogant of them. They do it in full vision. They don't fully clear it out. They don't respect the Lee Sin steal, and Lee Sin is able to get in and steal it. Yes, Najin White Shield are the better players. They have a bit better team composition at the moment to deal with this. If it was necessary, Rise could have teleported down, and he would have been able to offer more than Aurelia can offer. So the Dragon was essentially theirs, but they didn't properly clear it, and they end up losing it when they could have taken it. Having gotten the damage onto Kabum's team, they do properly respond by moving to the mid lane and taking the turret. So this goes into a big thing that was an issue in Season 3 World Championships that a lot of teams had to learn there, is win, fight, take objective. This has now become pretty common sense, knowledgeable play. Anytime you win a fight, leverage your stronger potential in your team then to take an objective to increase the gold lead you have gained and to open up the map for further possibilities. So we see one problem point for Kabum right here is that, as I was mentioning earlier, Corki getting to his Trinity Force before Aurelia. And he's gotten to it at a significantly quicker pace than Aurelia. They are going to be the most comparable mid-game champions at the moment. And with Najin White Shield having Corki ahead, this essentially means that Najin White Shield gain control of the mid-game. It's going to be very difficult for Kabum to actually be able to deal with him. If they can get the Lee Sin kick onto him like this, it would be really great and strong, but it's going to be really hard and difficult. Corki can essentially carry the game right now. Since Lulu's doing so well into middle, she has the ability, like I said before, she is a Zilean counter, able to harass him better, able to push him better, able to all-in him better, able to move around the map pretty similar to how he is able to move around the map. But every time the map, we see the cameras going bottom, we see this giant difference in damage coming out from Najin White Shield. Corki is taking Morgana and Tristana to half HP in 2 or 3 spells, plus an auto attack. It's a huge problem for Kabum, and without Aurelia being able to go in and fight Corki, Kabum don't have a response for this. Let's see, so what does Najin White Shield do from this point on? Honestly, they don't really do anything different than they've been doing. They wait for the next dragon, and then they look to take the team fight there. They continue to keep Zilean pushed up against his tower, make sure he's unable to get his roaming on. This will allow Lulu to get her own roam, potentially going to help Rise against Aurelia. Doesn't really need it, as we see Rise is now almost 50 CS above Aurelia, even though he's died twice. So Najin White Shield don't necessarily need to do much up top. They can just keep drawing out this game because they're creating they're not creating a gold lead, but they're creating a power lead. Since Rise is so far, it's like Najin White Shield are even on their hyper carry counterparts. Rise is on pace with Tristana, but their mid-game counterpart has had a very different story. Corki is way ahead of Aurelia, so things are on pace for Najin White Shield to keep control. If we also look towards the CS on Kha'Zix, he's very much ahead of Lee Sin. Kabum are still staying in similar gold though, primarily due to their 2 kills and that first blood gold. But this is also one thing I was talking about with the poke of Corki, and since he's so strong right now, he has the ability to control the match. And we're seeing this in this top lane push by Najin White Shield. Corki can throw out tons of damage onto whoever's defending, as well as get his attacks onto the turret. Aurelia tries to go in, he backs off, and then just returns greater damage. I'm not sure what Lulu is necessarily doing at this point. She had the option. They knew there was 4 people top. She could have been pushing into this mid turret. Instead, she's looking to try and find the kill onto Tristana. And she shouldn't, in all essence, she shouldn't be able to get it. Tristana didn't even need to use her flash. There's not enough burst on Lulu to be looking for this kind of thing. Instead, Lulu could have just pushed the mid turret, taken down the wave, and got a lot of damage onto this mid tier 2 turret while Kabum were distracted up top. This does earn Corki the red buff, but not really that big a deal. Turret damage would have been much more valuable. And the reason why I say that Lulu wouldn't be able to kill Tristana is simply because Lulu doesn't have the burst nor the lockdown. Tristana can simply use her ultimate to knock Lulu back and then use her leap to get away. It's the same concept of when Tristana gets jumped by Twitch. Yes, he has the assassination potential, but it's not upfront damage. She gets the knockback and the leap. She creates huge amounts of distance and is therefore safe. Now with the new dragon up, Najin White Shield will once again head for it. This is proper play. They have the mid-game power since they are ahead in their top lane specifically, and they do have control over the map through the missing mid turret and the bottom turret. They get the wards in the jungle of Kabum, are able to easily take the dragon for free. So as long as Najin White Shield continue at this pace, they'll continue to start to grow a gold lead. It'll be slower, and it'll be a slow lead, but it's already at a point on the right champions where there's a power gap that Aurelia can't overcome. She's unable to even fight Ryze anymore, who she should have been able to win the lane in at level 6 and 7. She's not going to be able to provide too much in team fights, as she's not very tanky. Whoever she gets on is just going to escape and then return more damage. She'll also be very protected by Lulu, who stops a lot of these leap-ins without a lot of tankiness, and since Aurelia is not really upfront burst, her diving in, the same thing goes to Lee Sin. Lulu's going to provide enough HP through shields and through her ultimate that effectively nullifies Aurelia and Lee Sin going in, and they're just going to die because they have no tanky stats. So Kabum don't have the option of engagement here. The best they could look for is to get a Lee Sin kick into a Morgana binding or vice versa. You're going to require solid mechanical skill and play from Danagorn. So what can Kabum do in this situation? The answer is simply not a lot. They need to scale into Tristana in the late game and really have her hit her 5-6 item spike. But then Ryze is going to do so as well. So it becomes a little bit of a game of chicken. Who's going to wait the longest to get to this point, and who's going to be able to do the most with it. We do see that Tristana is doing very well, but if we look at Kabum's team, the rest of Kabum's team, Aurelia and Lee Sin have fallen really far behind, and they keep falling farther and farther behind as the game goes on. So even if Tristana is scaling up at an acceptable or even very solid rate, her teammates are not, while Najin White Shield's teammates are. So if you want to compare Ryze to being even with Tristana, he's scaling up they're both scaling up at proper rates, whereas the rest of Najin White White's team, Kha'Zix and Corki specifically, are scaling up much faster than Irelia and Lee Sin are. So this is why things are a problem for Kabum. And it really came down to the very beginning, the lane swap being misplayed and Irelia just not finding the right items at the right times because of that. Kabum could potentially try for, say, a sneaky Baron. It would be extremely difficult. They'd have to start focusing on ward coverage right now. Hope they can get into it when Najin White Shield are preparing for this next dragon. They might be able to rush it down and escape, but it's a huge long shot. And if Najin and White Shield are warding properly, it'll never happen. But we have seen teams fall off in their warding at certain times, particularly one of TSM's match against TPA, I believe it was. We saw TPA take several turrets, or maybe it was Starhorn Royal Club. One of the two teams. Either one, we saw TSM not properly warding Baron, and the other team was able to take it under their nose twice. So this is something that Kabum could attempt to do. Right now, Najin and White Shield don't have any wards, and they haven't been seen up there in a while. Dragon's coming up in a minute 30, so it is an opportunity for them to go ahead and make make a very risky, very unexpected play. Otherwise, they can just look to defend and hope Tristana can carry, but it's not looking good for them. If they don't try any real big risky plays, then Najin and White Shield simply get to continue to play the game they're playing. A very slow, methodical burn of Kabum, eventually moving into the win. And the way we do see that Najin and White Shield facilitate this, and that's what I'll talk about, since I haven't talked about that in this game and I talk about it a lot in other ones. It's a very important. How do you start to close out the match when you are ahead? Najin and White Shield being ahead are properly drawing out the game to generate some small gold leads. They keep pulling Kabum apart. Rise is constantly split pushing, and there's nobody who can respond to this. Rise will beat anyone in the 1v1, as well as being able to probably outpush anybody on Kabum's team except for Tristana. Or even, except for Tristana because of Explosive Shot, but then you don't want to send Tristana against Rise. Rise will win. Zillion could go down and safely keep the crews back, but then you lose out on his Chrono Shift ultimate as well as the wave clear you need middle. So it's really difficult for Kabum to find someone to deal with this Rise. So Rise can continue to split push, continue to grow his CS lead, continue to draw one of Kabum's team members down to the bottom turret while Najin and White Shield work on the middle turret. So, how do you use Objective Dragon and Baron as well as the jungle of another team to create opportunities to take turrets? It's a little bit more difficult for red side team, as since Baron is such an important objective, and the red side jungle is a much stronger place to start taking vision control from the other team. It offers more pick opportunities, better rotational opportunities. Blue side has a lot more opportunity to create mistakes and openings than the red side does because of the simple positioning of Baron. However, what Najin and White Shield can do, they have the two options. One is to look for Baron attempts, and the other is to look for mid and bottom turrets. So I'll first explain how you would take out mid and bottom turrets. What Najin and White Shield needs to do is keep Rise in the bot lane, have him split push. Then the rest of Najin and White Shield's team will move into Kabum's red side jungle. In the red side jungle, they use their sweepers to clear out wards. They place lots of pinks, And they essentially light up the jungle with their own wards so they can see all the movements of Kabum. Once they can see all the movements of Kabum in their red jungle, they start to push mid and bottom at the same time. Whenever there's a creep wave middle, Najin White Shield move middle, take a few hits at the turret in middle. When that's wave cleared, Najin White Shield will run through the jungle, down this path that you see them going up right now. This path is much quicker for Najin White Shield to take than it is for Kabum. Kabum have to run along the base wall. If they want to move from middle to defend the bottom turret, they have to move along their base wall, which takes longer for them to move to their bottom turret than it does for Najin White Shield to move from mid to bottom turret. So Najin White Shield can retreat safely, move into the bottom lane, get a couple of hits onto the mid turret, repeat the process when the bottom creep wave is gone, and move to the middle turret and take a couple of shots. In this way, they slowly whittle down both mid and bottom turrets, and eventually they'll take them both. What this also affords Najin White Shield is the opportunity to pick off Kabum in the jungle. If Kabum ever try to take a quicker route to get into the bottom turret for defense instead of running along their base wall, they open themselves up to being caught out by Najin White Shield in this rotation. And this is how you make a team perform rotational mistakes. You take away all their vision in the jungle, you litter their jungle with your own vision so you can see all their movements, and then you constantly move from mid to bottom, top to mid, and eventually either you take a turret or the other team makes a mistake and you catch them out in the jungle. So this is how you can break the defensive line even when the other team has solid wave clear. One important component of this, though, is that you are ahead, that you do have the better 5v5 fight in the jungle. If you're fighting champions like Rumble, Orianna, even Twitch, you have to be very careful as they have extremely solid damage in small corridors. So you have to take this into consideration. But in this case, it would work very well for Najin White Shield. And so that's how they can break through the defenses of Najin White Shield. In this game, we don't see them necessarily doing that. We see them getting catches when Kabum's out too far, and then they take turrets in man-up situations. So this is an option when you're playing against a team who isn't being completely defensive. That's how you break super defensive teams, ones who are sitting back with, say, Ziggs, Tristana, looking to make it to this hyper late game. As we see, Kabum do try and make a play with Lee Sin. Fortunately, his mechanics aren't quite there. His entire team tries to save him, and it ends up with Najin White Shield getting 4 kills and the inhibitor, as well as moving into Baron now. And this essentially is the nail in the coffin for Kabum. Though they were at a slow death before, now it's been vastly ramped up. And this is the advantage of trying to make crazy plays. When you figure out that you're losing and going to lose if you don't do anything, if the crazy play doesn't work, you just accelerate the game and make it so that it ends faster. So having said this, let's talk about Baron and how you force plays around Baron. If you're looking to take Baron, force the other team to come defend it, looking to end the game that way by getting the siege potential or by drawing your opponents out, you have to dedicate yourself to it. Good Baron control is going to take about 3 to 4 minutes. You're going to want to have one person designated to protecting the top lane who keeps the wave managed, one person who's going to keep the mid lane managed, and the other 3 are going to constantly be defending the river. You want to keep your opponents unable to place wards for a good 3 minutes if you can monitor their movements. In this case, Najin White Shield places several wards in Kabum's blue side jungle, then they can monitor their movements, and once 3 minutes have passed, they know that there are no wards in the river and no wards at Baron. By using sweepers, you can accelerate how long this takes, especially through great use of pinks. You can cover entire areas and zones. But by dedicating yourself to this strategy of denial of vision for 3 minutes, you open up the window for Baron. Once the other team has no vision, you have a couple options. You can either start Baron and wait for them to come at you, or you can put yourself in a bush and look for a pick. Eventually, the other team has to decide, do we check Baron, or do we just give it up? This works out well when you have your mid tier 1 up, because this is sort of a stopping point. It prevents aggression from the other team. If the other team try and circumvent you and say, you know what, we'll push middle instead of coming to meet you at Baron, you can just quickly kill Baron and then flank around behind them as they're heading towards your tier 2. If your mid tier 1 is down, this is a bit more dangerous. As we've seen in other games, teams can take the tier 2 and move into your inhibitor before you can kill Baron. But what this also does mean is that if they do decide to move into your tier 2 or tier 1 turret, this allows you to come up from behind and flank them. This is how you use Baron to either take Baron or to force the other team out of their base and make a move. It essentially guarantees you a fight or a free Baron, as long as you play it correctly. And so these are the ways how to break a siege, not break a siege situation, but break a situation in which you cannot break into the other team's turrets, where you are not strong enough to turret dive, where sieging is hard because they have very solid wave clear. And so I hope that was informative. Anyways, that's our game. Najin White Shield come out with the win as expected. I hope you're able to take away a couple things from this match, particularly level 1 movements, lane freezes, how to deal with it when you get it, how to respond when you don't get it on your own side. Hope you take away from this that you need to know where your focus needs to be early on. In this particular game, the focus needed to be on Aurelia, making sure she could carry through that mid-game lull of Tristana. And then I hope you can also take away some of the ladder stuff, even though it wasn't entirely relevant to this match, but how you break into the turret lines using Baron, using jungle map rotations. So once again, the notes for this match can be found below, as well as a link to the portal page for all of my 2014 League of Legends World Championship video analysis and notes. I'm Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers, and thanks for watching.